for, so that
It's
people.
now live, okay.
Yeah, we are not live.
So now, yeah, wow.
Do you want to take questions in throughout it, or do you want to?
No, I can take questions throughout. I think that's good to kind of splice it up a little bit.
Oh, did you launch this live?
I did.
You did. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it said start webinar, and I clicked the button.
Okay.
Was I too early?
No, that's fine. A few people are coming in. I just now hey everybody who's just joined. We launched it a couple of minutes early, so we're just going to give this a minute or two for people to join in. So just bear with us. I just have to be careful of what I say now. Now I know we're live.
Yeah, now you know. Right. You are now live. Behave.
For those of you just joining, we're just going to give it another minute or so for people to filter in. So just bear with us. Thanks. All right, so it is 4 o'clock, Chris. I think we can probably get going.
Sure. It is 4 o'clock, and welcome back to one of these webinars, everybody, where we're addressing PPP and related issues. As you can see, I'm in a little bit of different venue today than I usually am. You're not seeing my draconian radiation treatment mask anymore. I used to be strapped down to a table, but I am down in Delaware kind of supervising some workers in a house here. So if you hear some noise, it's not me, it's them. So we're talking about second bite of the PPP apple. And that is obviously good news, $284 billion set aside in the budget for it. And that is probably going to be plenty, since it's now limited to 300 at the most employees and the max is 2 million. So we're not going to have the huge corporations getting a big portion of this money. More small companies are going to get a bigger share, I think. The structure, the framework is basically almost the same as in the first bucket. So, but first we go into that. I do want to come back to something that I've talked about many times, and that is forgiveness. It has been such a stop and start process to that I have heard of and I've seen, and I'm almost forgotten myself about checking on this process and getting it done. But this has to get done. Don't blow this. I know that a lot of banks have suspended applications pending new rules from SBA, but don't let that slip by. You have 10 months after the cover period ends. And for you who have forgotten what that means that it is 8, or for almost everybody, it's 24 weeks after you got the funding of the first PPP. And that's 168 days, I believe that is. 7 times 24. Yes, 168 days. And don't blow that, because if you do, it's not forgiven and you have to pay it back in 18 months. You don't want to do that. That is important. And let's talk about that a little bit more. There are things that are changing in terms of forgiveness. There are 3 forms, actually. There is the regular, what they call the 3508, and with all the ins and outs, bells and whistles, all the full-time equivalents, wage reductions, all the safe harbor periods, all those things in that form, which is really only the biggest companies should really get to worry about that, because it's big, convoluted, difficult to deal with. Then you have the easy form if you qualify, and that's if you go back. We're going to get back to all this in subsequent webinar. That were the 3 things, 1 of 3 qualifications for it. I'm just going to take this down, it's distracting me. There were 3 different things to qualify for this form, which takes you out of the regular big form and into an easier form. Then there is the one that has been in effect for everybody under 50K. That is now going to be under 150K. That's good news for a lot of folks. And it's a 1-page form, and you're certifying that you're following all the rules, you're doing it, you don't have to submit anything other than that form. And that apparently is going to be live on the 19th. And as usual, it's going to be a lender portal. And many lenders were up and running and closed down again, waiting now for SBA to get their act together. The other big thing about forgiveness, what that is that there are no tax issues anymore with it. It is now clear, very clear, that these money are tax deductible. There are no issues that expenses are not deductible. So you don't have to pay taxes on this money. So you can now kind of be freer to think about what you do. And in that, they also fix the basis issues for partnerships and S corps, so that you can put up that basis, you have room to take a loss. There is one issue with the timing between 2021. You have the 2020 expenses, you have the 2021 forgiveness. Talk to your CPA, should be able to figure it out. In worst case, you push that, taking that loss into the 2021. But in general, the basis issue has been fixed. So what do you do now? There has been an issue for people who needed to get their balance sheet in order, if they needed to buy a building, if they needed to get another loan, whatever reasons there were, or maybe comply with bank covenants. So the CPAs I have talked to and the approach I'm taking in some case is that if you're reasonably sure that you're going to get the forgiveness, then you can convert this PPP debt, sits now on the balance sheet as a debt, you can convert it to equity by reducing the expenses that they apply to. That goes to profit, and then it goes increasing your equity. Talk to the CPA on how to do that. And we're now into 2021, so people are going to start submitting their books and the records to the CPAs. So that debt should now start becoming equity for everybody. There is no question mark anymore because the tax issue has been taken care of. Big deal. Another big deal for smaller companies is that the EIDL grant, remember going back to EIDL, the first thing that happened on an EIDL, you got 10,000 dumped into your bank account. Nobody knew where it came from, but that was the EIDL grant. And then everybody started understanding, well, wait a minute, that gets deducted from my forgiveness, and many smaller companies, doesn't affect the big companies as much, but many smaller companies were in the situation that they got 15,000 PPP and 10,000 EIDL grant. So in this, they would end up with only 5,000 actually of the PPP forgiven. That's no longer the case. If they got 15,000 in PPP that gets forgiven, and they got the EIDL grant of 10,000, there is no paying back. All the 25,000 stays with the recipient. For small company, that's a fairly big deal. For companies that got $1 million PPP, not that big a deal. And there is also a new grant, EIDL grant for hardest hit areas, low income areas. What that means, we don't know yet at this point. What that means for low income areas. SBA hasn't come up with those yet. It's been said that SBA is going to come out with their rules on the 13th. So we have to see. Hopefully there's going to be a lot more clarification by that time as it comes out.
Just whilst you're taking a breath, Chris,
Yes.
I just wanted to let everybody know, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We are going to be taking questions and answers, and I see a couple in there already. So just, don't be shy. We'll take as many questions as you want. Just put them into the Q&A and we'll get to them.
Yeah. There is a question there now that says,
do you want to read it, Chris, or do you want me to?
You can do it.
Okay, so the question we have right now, we have a couple of questions, which is, what about the changes in the new legislation that said a simpler form for forgiveness would be available for under 150,000? Is it 10 months after the end of the covered period? So I think that's
yes, there is a, on the 19th, there is a simpler form that's going to come out that is going to cover up to 150,000. And that you can use that simpler form. You don't have to actually submit any supporting documentation to do it. That exists now for 50,000. It gets bumped up to 150. Yes, and you have 10 months after the end of the covered period to apply for forgiveness.
And then the other question that we have in there, which is, when are the applications opening and due by? Do we know that yet?
Yeah, no, the question is, if you mean the PPP forgiveness applications, they are open in some banks. They have been open for a little bit in some banks. They closed them down again based on that SBA is going to update their rules for forgiveness. And those rules is being said, rumored to be applying also to the first PPP go around.
It's really interesting how differently the banks work. I have one customer who applied for the PPP forgiveness for the first round and has already had his approval and had that forgiven. And then I have somebody else who banks with a different bank who the applications for forgiveness aren't even out there yet. So it's really interesting, the variations.
Yeah, I'm involved with a couple of banks, and there is one that hasn't started the application process yet. There's one that started and closed it down, and then there's one that just kept it open. And well, the forgiveness for the first, there is a question about the forgiveness on the first PPP. That is open, SBA has it open, and it's up to the banks on what they do. And no, you don't have to apply for forgiveness or get the forgiveness before you apply for the second bite at that apple. So you can do that. What you have to certify is that you have spent the money or will spend the money that you got in the first go around.
So you have to certify that you've already spent the money from the first go around, or that you are going to spend the money. Is that correct?
I said it the way I said it deliberately, actually, and because that is the way it reads. But it came out in December, where the end of the covered period for anybody would end on December 31st. But I think they do actually mean will spend. And it's also unclear, spend on what? Does it have to be spent on forgiven expenses, or any operational expenses? I think it's the latter. I also know that most people are not going to have a problem actually having enough expenses to be forgiven. Yes, I think I am saying that there's going to be another version coming out of 113. Yes, I do think so. That is what I'm reading. That's what I'm being told. So continue on here a little bit, and we can get back to the questions later.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we keep moving, and then we'll come back to some questions. Yeah.
So for the second bite, the end of the application period as it stands now.
We lost your sound, Chris.
Running out of, yeah.
You've frozen, Chris, just so you know. Bear with us, folks. I think we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty. Just bear with us. And you're back, but we don't see your screen anymore.
Okay, I will bring up the screen again. Did I just disappear?
Yep, you froze.
I froze, okay.
At least you didn't freeze in an unflattering position.
I know why. I didn't move the booster when I moved up here. So, okay, hopefully we'll be good. So whether you are, when you apply, it's dependent on, if you think the program's going to run out of money, apply as soon as you can, as soon as banks are open. Or the other consideration is on the certification of whether this is necessary for you or not. And we're going to get into that later because there is a timing issue on that. So what are the requirements for the second bite? Well, first is that you have less or equal to 300 employees. There is a revenue reduction in any quarter in 2020 compared to the same quarter in 2019. And then what does that mean? And I am now talking for the people who could be close to that border. if you're at 24%, 24.5%, 23%, the verbiage is gross receipts. And we're going to get into what does that mean? How do you look at that? And then, as we said, spent all of the first PPP money or will. And then we have the necessity test. We get into that here. The revenue reduction. So over 25%. So what does that mean? So in my mind, the way I'm looking at it, one second, I'm just going to close the door here. The workers are a little bit noisy. Why I'm looking at it, that could mean receipts or revenues. That could mean based on cash or accrual accounting. So I would first make sure that you know and have looked at your potential reductions between any quarter 2020 and any quarter 19, and look at revenue recognition issues. For example, if you look, most people are going to look at the second quarter 2020 compared to the same quarter 19, because that's when most of us took the biggest hit. So let's say that you end up at 22% reduction and you say, I'm not making it. Then look at your books. Could you have, is there an invoice for $80,000 that you invoiced in June that you have in revenues that hasn't been paid yet? Is that a candidate to be written off in June? Those are legitimate issues to look at that you shouldn't overlook if you are close. So don't just run the financials and look and say, I didn't make it. Talk to your accountant, talk to your bookkeeper. And the reason I have this high jumper here is illustrating that you got to tell them to jump and they're going to say how high, because this is really important. You don't want to be in a situation where you're 24% now and you say, oh, okay. And then 2 months from now, you say, holy cow, I needed this money. My market has gone away. So I would encourage everybody who is on the border to really take a good look at your books.
Do you think, Chris, it would be fair to assume, or never assume, but it would be fair to say that if you file your taxes as cash basis, then you should probably look at this as from a cash basis standpoint, and if you file, or it's not relevant?
Unless SBA comes out with very precise regulations and rules on how to look at this, I wouldn't say so. And especially that issue, if you look at the cash issue and you don't make it, but if you do your books on an accrual basis and you make it, in my mind, there is no doubt that you qualify, none whatsoever. And because those are two different issues. And from the perspective of this, can you pick and choose? I don't know. If there aren't SBA rules coming out and saying how you're going to do it, then I would pick one that makes it for you if the first one doesn't. I know many are going to say, is that right, etc. Many people, this is going to be about survival. And if SBA doesn't address it, then there's a reason they don't address it. And they will leave it up to you to figure it out. We will know as we go into in 2 weeks, hopefully, when we do the next webinar, this will probably have been addressed by the SBA by then. Because this, for many people, this can be a big issue.
Well, and how would that, so, I mean, for example, seasonal businesses, right? If it's quarter over quarter or month over month, for seasonal businesses, that may not be as easy to sort of calculate, or it may not be as fair to calculate, I guess is the.
Well, it is the same quarter as last year. So this year, if you are a seasonal business on the Jersey Shore and you are affected by the tourism at all, then the the second and third quarter are big quarters for you, were big quarters last year. You probably took a hit in the revenues this year. There should be, I think that many people will have that 25% reduction at that time. And then many people for the end of the year, you haven't closed the books yet, look to see what is legitimate accounting and what can you do with that revenue recognition legitimately. It is a conversation to be had with your accountant and CPA. And you got to figure the right numbers there. As I said, you don't want to be in that situation. You're at 24% and you really needed the money. And unless there is nothing, you're at 24% and that's it, that's it. So let's look at a couple of questions. Somebody's asking, what is the forgiveness program? PPP, Payroll Protection Program, has a feature in that they give you the money as a loan, and then you qualify by having enough payroll and other applicable expenses over 24 weeks that you can apply to the loan and you get it forgiven. And it's an application through the bank. How will the forgiven PPP amount be handled tax-wise? It is not taxable. If you got $300,000, that $300,000 is not taxable. All the expenses that you spent are tax deductible. There is no tax effect. You don't have to pay taxes on it. Can a business apply for PPP loan if the business just began in October 2020? No, unfortunately not. It is, the line is in the sand is February 15, 2020. And that is in business. And there's another interpretation. What does in business mean? Were you formed? You had started? Did you have revenues? I don't know. It's up to individual interpretation how you do that. I know of people who had started in February, end of January, and they were approved for PPP loan. My bank sold its PPP loan to Loan Source. Can you tell me anything about them? They are a lender and a loan processor, and it shouldn't affect you. You should just go ahead, and it will be with Loan Source that you will do the application. And what I've heard about Loan Source is that they are pretty good at it. They will know what to do. They will know. And another feature in this, first PPP bite, you can do that now. If you didn't get in on the first round and you would have qualified, you can now go back in and apply based on the first requirements. Less than 500 employees, etc. That is still there. That is, you can still do that. Or if you didn't get the max, you can go back to your bank and tell them that you will modify the first round. And then you can still do the second. Another thing in the new law is that there is something called a shattered venue grant that is for live venue operator, theaters, movie operators, museums, motion picture operators, those kind of things. Pretty much the same kind of expenses for qualifying as it is in the regular PPP, except there's an additional feature because of live venue operators. The independent contractor payments are eligible if you do a 1099 to them. Same 25% reduction applies. The grant is up to 40% of gross revenue for 2019. So this is kind of going back to the first bite. how does it work to get the money? It is the same thing as in the first go around. It's 2.5 times the average payroll cost, which are the gross payroll, local state payroll taxes, retirement benefits costs such as 401k, a little bit expanded. And when I send out this to you, I'm also going to send out a little chart that goes to show which ones. There's some, in some operations, the owner's retirement benefits aren't eligible. But again, for most people, it's not going to matter because the payroll is going to suck it up most of the times. And then they expanded the health, dental, vision insurance cost and expanded to group life, also included in that average payroll cost. So for now, before it was the average cost for 2019, now it is the 2019 or any 12-month period up to the date of the loan. So you can pick which 12-month period is actually more beneficial for you, which actually creates the most money for you. And it says you can do it up to the loan, you get the loan, which is not practical. So when you're thinking of applying for this, then you pick your date, end of the year, 12/31, November 30, January 31st, etc., and go 12 months back. Again, chances are 2019 is going to be best for you. If you're a restaurant operator, the new setup for the second PPP is 3.5 times that number. And that is for hotels, restaurants, anything with an NAICS number of 72. Now, if you're a new entity that started before or on 2/15, then you look at the average from the start time up until the application time. And there are some additional costs that you can cover and do things with, like remote equipment, PPE equipment, and those kind of things. So in the forgiveness aspect of this, the eligible expenses is the payroll cost, just like in the first one, and it's 60% of the forgiven cost has to be payroll. And it's the same payroll cost as it was here, what I said here. And then the additional eligible expenses have been expanded a little bit. And that can be 40% of the forgiveness cost or 66% of the base payroll cost. There again, you have the rent. If you rented on or before 2/15, mortgage interest, utilities, again, in effect, before or on 2/15, then they apply for the whole period of time. Then some operating expenses, and now it's also property damage, supplier cost, and worker protection cost. So can you speak about LLC partnership and how we calculate how much owner salary is as they are not on payroll? Well, if you're not on payroll, then you actually go on your portion of the Schedule C for the LLC. And each one of you are capped at 100,000. So you go to the Schedule C, it's the net income, and you have your portion of the net income being the eligible expense, just like it is for sole proprietor. It's a Schedule C basis.
So Chris, I have a question about that from an LLC perspective. So if, say you as an LLC owner haven't been taking money from the business because the business hasn't had the money to pay you, right? You can't take your distributions, and your Schedule C for 2020 is going to basically show very little income. How will that work for this purpose, for the PPP, for the forgiveness?
So
You understand my question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting question, especially now here, because in 2019, your Schedule C is done, you filed your taxes, and it may have shown very little income. So now, and then you're stuck with that. You did your Schedule C, and it is the net income. You divide by 12 and multiply by 2.5. That's how you do it. But now you have any 12-month period. So you haven't done your Schedule C. So what they're really asking is you can make your Schedule C, and whatever that shows, Schedule C, let's say that you select to do it from September 1st, 2019 to August 31st, 2020. And then you produce a Schedule C calculated for that period of time. That's how I know some people have done it. And then they show let's say, $100,000 or $150,000 for one member LLC. Then you can take $100,000 of that and make that your loan for the owner portion of it. And so you have to then look at what your current is, your current Schedule C.
Got it. And you tell my dogs were very excited about that.
Yes, I'm sure. So now I should say here, go back, I can't do it here. So forgiveness, the rules for headcount, FT, wage reduction, safe harbors, etc., are the same as it was before in the first go around, except if it's under 150,000, those FTE and wage reductions are irrelevant. You don't have to worry about them if you have less than 150,000. They don't apply to you. And we're waiting for SBA to come up with more clarification on that issue. So here is another question. We are a beauty salon, and in August last year took over another salon since it was going to close and the employees were going to be let go. We were able to continue them. We did not buy the corporation, so we don't have any of their records. When we apply, can we still claim their revenue for last year? Otherwise, we will not get enough to cover the payroll. I would venture to say no, you probably can't. Because you will have a hard time show the payroll records that would support the PPP application. It's going to be the same record as the last time. It's going to be the payroll tax reporting. It's going to be payroll reporting, and that payroll reporting won't be in your corporation. And I don't think that the banks will accept it. I don't think so. It's an interesting question. I'm going to dig in a little bit more to that and see if there is anything, because you would think that could be legitimately what could be done.
I mean, it would be a legitimate expense to incorporate, wouldn't it? But I wonder if the bank applications, which in many instances are automated, are going to be able to manage that kind of variant.
Yeah, it is all automated, and to a large extent, it has to fit in the box. Sometimes the box isn't square, it's very fuzzy, kind of oblong, etc. But however shaped the box in, it kind of have to fit in a box. I'm going to check into that, because there's probably more than you, this questionnaire, who has this issue. So I'm going to send out my deck to you, and there is a bunch of key takeaways that you can look at.
So I think just for everybody who's on this, what we'll do after this webinar is we'll send out the deck to everybody who registered, so you'll have access to it, and it's also going to be available on our YouTube channel to relook at this. So just for the person who just asked that question, and anybody else, just know that information is available.
Okay, so here's another question. We are a beauty salon, and in August last year took over another salon. Okay. Oh, that was the question. Okay. We got that. So at this point, knowing as much as we know now, that's kind of what we have to go over. I expect that SBA will come out with a lot of regulation, a lot of interpretations, a lot of guidance in the next week or so. And we're also going to start, I think, we're going to start seeing bank opening up, and we're going to start seeing how banks are approaching it. I have now gotten word from several banks that some are saying we're only doing the second bite we're only doing the second bite for current customers, or who we did the first bite for, or some are saying we will do for non-customers if they don't have a credit relationship with another bank, those kind of things. I've also seen one bank who's saying they're not going to do the second one, which is very strange, because I expect most banks who did your first one, who are going to say, are you going to use the same 2019 records that you did for the first one? If you do, I don't need any more. I don't need any more than what I have. So just send in the application, we take those records and we go. That's what I expect, because the banks make a lot of money on this. They get 5% commissions on loans up to 350,000. They get 3% on everything over 350,000. Think about that for a second. We're looking at $284 billion to be doled out, and lenders are going to get 3 to 5. Let's say average it out at 4% on that. That's $12 billion in fees that the banks are going to generate. They're going to want to do these loans. So I expect when they're going to come back and say, you were with me, come again, we'll make it simple for you. That's what I would expect from the second buy.
And I would say as well, just from kind of personal experience on this, don't discount the unknown banks and the online banks. They have shown me, with some of the people that I've been working with, that they're actually much easier to use and very quick to turn things around. It's their business. They don't have a big infrastructure that they need to support. And so, you know, I think someone said earlier about Loan Source. They may be good people to go directly to. So sorry, I was adding to that, to what you were saying, Chris, because I think sometimes we're afraid as business owners, and, you know, it's an unknown bank, it's an online bank, they may trust.
But those non-bank lenders were very good at the first go around for smaller amounts. I would say up to 150,000 or so. I don't know anybody with more than that went to that, but they're very good. They got the technology down, they are fast, they know how to communicate. There is one I'm a little bit surprised over, that was Cabbage. They did a lot of loans in the first go. But then American Express, I think, bought them. And now they're saying they don't know if they're going to do it again. At least that was 2 days ago. I think we have a question.
No, that was just the person with the beauty salon giving us.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, so I saved that for you.
I don't have any more because there is not more information out there at this point in time, more clarity. I would expect in 2 weeks, there are going to be more coming up. And I'm going to go back to the things that we went over the first time and go back again on going through what is it that we need? How do you do it? Now it's going to be a lot easier because the payroll companies now have this down. They did it once. They're going to do the same thing again. They're going to be a lot better at it this time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and I think as business owners, I think we as business owners probably now know better what records we need to keep about how we're spending the money and how it should be applied, etc.
Yes, yes. One thing I do want to go back to that I'm not sure that I did talk about.
So whilst we're looking at just, there's a couple of
Oh, wait
questions.
a minute, I'm not sharing, so let me
No,
share.
you're not sharing. We're looking at you.
Looking at me trying to share, yes.
So there was a question that says, will there be forgiveness for the second round of PPP? And the answer, I believe, is yes, right?
Absolutely, yes, that's part of it, absolutely. There is. So the necessity test. I'm not sure, did I jump over this? I think I did, right?
Yep, I think you jumped over.
Yeah, so what they're asking for, and if you get less than 2 million, then you're just signing off certifying that it's necessary. If you get more than 2 million between the two loans, you're gonna have to fill out the form, pretty detailed form of the necessity where they're asking questions. I did go through that. I did talk about stupid, yes. So that is very important. Get your forecast in line. If you like what I told you I did with 10%, I'm going to stick that forecast in my files. I'm going to take the memos I wrote to the board, stick it in the files, and have it in case somebody comes back, and that could be you fire Bert or Mona, and they get mad because they think you're driving a too good of a car. They shouldn't have fired. You shouldn't have fired them, and they are going to be whistleblowers. Not going to happen to more than 2 out of 1,000, but it could happen. And this is what you have that for. If you get less than 2 million, SBA isn't come back and look to it, but IRS could, other agencies could, and whistleblowers could. Competitors could. I have heard rumors in one industry that there was one that was going to do it to another competitor, those kind of things. So just get your records in order.
So we have a question. I'm a custom cabinet maker. From March to May, I couldn't install my projects and couldn't collect the final payments used for the PPP money for rent. Will that be forgivable?
I'm sorry, say that again. I have these workers here.
Hold on, because my dog started barking just. So I'm a custom cabinet maker. From March to May, I couldn't install my projects and could not collect final payments used, and I used my PPP money for rent. Will that be forgivable?
Yes, it will. And same thing again, though, it is 60% of the forgivable has to be payroll. Then otherwise, yes, rent is part of that if the lease facility lease was signed before February 15th. Money for HACS. No, at this point, I can't say too much about it, but there's a lot of things in that law that is there, and I'm going to write something more about that and send out to everybody. At this point, I haven't been diving too far into it, but there is money in all the different areas in the 900 billion.
And then we have Oh, you got it.
Yeah, can you talk about some of the important forms and records we need for the forgiveness under 150? Well, there are two things under 150. You are not having to upload them to the bank if the bank follows instructions from SBA. You don't have to upload them, but you're supposed to have them. And what they are is that you need your payroll records that will show that you spent the money on payroll that is at least 60% of the forgivable amount. So you want to go to your payroll processor, tell them that you want a PPP forgiveness report. By now, they know what that is. 6 months ago, they didn't. Now they do. They made them. They know what you're asking for. So you want that. You're going to need your 941, and there is another number that are the payroll tax reports to show that you did the payroll tax. For rent, mortgage payments, and those kind of things, you want the lease on record, and you want to show your payments that went out. So if you do this by an ACH or online check or something, then just download that, put it in your PPP file, and have it there. So those, and for healthcare, then you want your health insurance bill and a proof that you paid it. And the same with the other ones. So it's kind of commonsensical. It's what you think you're going to need. And we are going to get through more of that later in specific sessions about it. But we've done this before. I'm kind of just going to bring it up and reload it and talk about it again. But that's what you just ask your most important. For 24 weeks, most of the cases, payroll may be the whole thing. So ask your payroll company for the PPP report.
The one thing just to let everybody know as well is we are going to be doing this call bi-weekly. So we'll have this every other week. And Chris is a self-professed PPP enthusiast. So he's really on top of all the information. I don't think there's a greater wealth of knowledge that you can get other than from Chris. So we will be doing this bi-weekly. And as and when, as and when the rules change and become more clear, we'll have that for you on these webinars.
Yeah. And there is a question here that says, same as owner's draw, I suppose. I'm guessing what that question is in reference to, and I think that would be for a single member LLC and sole proprietor who is using the owner compensation replacement, that they call it, for forgiveness for Schedule C. If you are in that position that you're in a partnership for sole proprietor, it's not the draw. It's based on your net income on Schedule C. So if you take a draw as bank check sufficient, it's not the draw. If, let's say, your net income shows $150,000 and you drew $80,000, you're still eligible for the maximum $100,000 on that as a basis for that. And what happens is that for sole proprietor or single member LLC, etc., is that it's 20.83%, I think, is for that. So if you had a net income of 150,000, you drew 80,000, forget the draw, doesn't matter. But you then get to the max 100,000, and of that, you can borrow $20,833.
So are there any other questions out there? But does anybody have any other questions? There we go. Can the PPP loan be used for merchandise? I'm a sole proprietor and I work from home. I use freelancers for some of the work I can't do myself. I didn't apply for the first round of loans.
Okay, so what was the first, can it be used for?
Merchandise.
We have to see what the SBA comes out with for the second one. There is additional operating expenses, payment to suppliers, supposed to be part of them. And we really have to see what SBA, how they define it, but I believe so, yes. And in this person's case, going back, it sounds like it's either a single member LLC or a sole proprietor. And then again, you're into the Schedule C, what we just talked about, that those are your eligible payroll expenses that you can base it on. But the forgiveness, yeah, there are other expenses that come into play for that. Yes.
Okay, so I think if there's no other questions, we don't need to belabor and keep everyone on. We can finish a few minutes early. Just as I said, this is every other week. Please share with any other small business owners that you know, or and it does not have to be just Monmouth County or New Jersey. This is a federal program, so really anywhere can join this webinar if it's useful information. So please share with your friends, etc. Share with other small business owners. It's so important that we get the word out and we try to help people with this, because it's a valuable source of funding, and it can be very confusing and overwhelming to people. Just a quick word about SCORE as well. Just remember, SCORE is a free business mentoring service. So we have business mentoring, one-on-one business mentoring available to people. Feel free to check out our website. And if you're looking for a business mentor, reach out. We have a wealth of sort of knowledgeable people that volunteer their time to offer mentoring services to businesses. And we do a number of webinars. So check out our webinars and stay in touch with what we're doing, and share the word with your friends. We're always looking for new customers, new mentors, and new mentors. So either or, if you think you know somebody who would be a good business mentor, or if you think that you need mentoring for your business, or your friends need mentoring for their businesses, reach out. And I think that's all I have. I think that is,
Yep.
Chris, anything else to add?
No, I think that's it. I think we're good.
All right.
Thanks everybody for attending. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you so much for attending, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Have a good night.
Good night.